Alright everybody, welcome back to the Serpents Tongue. This is episode 3. We're going to be recording this in my vehicle just like episode 2. Sometimes you've got to do the best with what you've got, and right now I don't have the, luxury of having access to my office, and I don't have anywhere to really sit down and record anything without being disturbed. So sometimes, again, you've got to do what you got to do, and I'd rather record this episode than not record it because I want to get the message out. I said in episode 1, which was the introduction to this podcast, that this is going to be a really grassroots approach to podcasting, and I really kind of like doing that sort of thing, folks. I don't think I've ever heard a podcast that was recorded in a vehicle, and this is real life. So it is what it is. I want the message to get out there, and I'll do whatever it takes to get it out there. But I do indeed apologize for the noise. But while we record this, I'm going to take you on a drive with me through a beautiful California day. Everything's super green right now, you guys. The sun is out and it's relatively clear out here, which is a nice change. California has really gotten hit with a lot of the weather manipulation technology. We've gone over this in prior videos. I grew up here in California. I've seen what it's like, all throughout the 90s and part of the 2000s. Weather was very, very predictable for the most part, you guys. There were certain times a year where it would rain. It was like this every fucking year for the most part growing up. I remember going through high school, you guys, and we had one of those outdoor/indoor high schools, so the hallways were covered, and there were parts of the year where it would rain so hard that water would just fall down the sides of the covered hallways. There would be a wall of water on both sides. It was actually really cool. I miss that. I miss real weather. And even back then, you guys, weather was highly manipulated, but it wasn't to the extent that it is now. So I don't need to hear any bullshit from anybody. We know for a damn fact that they have the technology to manipulate the weather. They can do things like cloud seeding, ladies and gentlemen. We've gone over extensively in the past the reality of high aerosol, or stratospheric aerosol injections, also known as SAI, high altitude aerosol spraying, the deliberate and intentional injection of metallic nanoparticles into the atmosphere. Barium, strontium, mylar fibers, chaff, aluminum. Megatons of this stuff has been directly injected into our atmosphere, folks, and we're breathing this stuff. We're breathing this stuff on a regular basis. So we are a symbiotic entity, a symbiotic creature with our environment, and the people who run the show know this, and that's why they've been tinkering with the weather. There's very wealthy parts of the world, ladies and gentlemen, where it very rarely rains, and the wealthy royalty there can actually make it rain through the manipulation of the weather. This has been going on for years. And this can all be looked up. This is all verifiable. So, man, I mean, they really want to control the weather because it's one of the greatest weapons. Weather modification is one of the greatest weapons, ladies and gentlemen, because imagine if you were about to invade a country and you could cause massive amounts of just rainstorms or even thunderstorms or just whatever. You can really throw your enemy off. And the technology is out there. It's already, in my opinion, probably perfected. I'm sure they're going to be able to tweak things and make it more efficient. But long story short, you guys, I don't want to get into some expose or long rant, about geoengineering, also known as stratospheric aerosol injections, the deliberate modification of the weather for a specific purpose. But I kind of wanted to bring it up just because of, looking up at the sky and seeing that it's blue here. It's a nice change here in California, but I wanted to bring it up to just paint a picture here about how the world as we know it does not work the way that you think it does. There are innumerable secrets everywhere you look in this reality. There are innumerable secrets just about your consciousness, folks, your body, your mind. You see, we get presented a story as we develop here in this world. At a young age, we're presented a story, and we're expected to uphold that story in our beliefs, in our mind. And most people do. And most people actually end up passing this story, these culturally accepted norms and beliefs. Most people will develop into adults, have children, hand the programming down to their children, and then their children will repeat the cycle. It's a vicious cycle, folks. I've been saying this for years. So unfortunately, because of some bad information that was handed down to us, and because it's been, through our generations handed down to, grandfather, just all of us, our whole family, we've bought into this lie. Because of the mass weight of all of the belief, if you will, there's like a gaslighting or a peer pressure effect that happens where you're expected to conform to the norms. Does that make sense? And that's how this system is it's been erected or built, established. It creates a mass weight against you. An inertia, if you will. A pull. It wants you to agree with its standards so that the machine can have a continuity, if you will. You see, the system doesn't like free-thinking, independent thinkers, capable of thinking outside of the box, capable of questioning his or her own mind and beliefs. The system does not like that, because those people quickly become weapon systems or threats against the system. And the system, ladies and gentlemen, is just the overarching power that rules the show here, or runs the show here. It's all connected to the mega banks, pharmacies, the secret societies that run the cities, and it's a very well lubricated machine that keeps things going consistently. It keeps things moving. It keeps things humming. It keeps the engine moving, ladies and gentlemen. The system is a conglomerate, if you will, a consortium of committees and regulatory establishments and law enforcement, just all of it. It's an amalgam of the establishments, ladies and gentlemen, that keep things in order here. I hope that makes sense. I try to make these things really kind of easy to understand and simple. And of course, there's secret society elements to all this, ladies and gentlemen. We have all the evidence to prove this and then some. The New World Order is a very real thing. So we have all these committees and organizations and, foundations that are part of this New World Order. And then we have these royal families, these bloodlines at the top of it that really, truly run the show. But and I don't want to get into some historical bloodline kind of thing. Maybe we'll do that in the future. But one of the reasons, ladies and gentlemen, one of the goals, if you will, of the evil in this world that runs the show is to keep human beings from taking the next step in their development. And it's not just spiritual development that I'm talking about. I know I said that, but that kind of just escaped my mouth. They want to keep us from evolving physiologically and spiritually. They don't want us to awaken the Kundalini. And that's why, ladies and gentlemen, every single thing, for the most part, that is pushed on us is anti-Kundalini. It's anti-reality. It's anti-real health. And health and Kundalini are one and the same. I mean, the spearhead of real health is Kundalini, because Kundalini is enlightenment, and true health is enlightenment, folks. The full expression of your genetics, your consciousness, your body, your mind, all of it. So, I think it's a little strange that when you truly look at the world with your blinders off, you start to see how certain things have been put into play that keep us from really realizing our true potential. I mean, just turn the television on for a while, you guys, and take a look at the messages they're very depressing. They're not uplifting. They're not motivating. They're not encouraging. A lot of the stuff that's on the children's networks is just beyond vile. How parents can't see this is beyond me. It's monumental, you guys, what's truly going on here. So, again, I mean, like, I'm not going to name any names, but I'm pretty sure you know one of the biggest children's networks. The stuff that gets played on these networks, the subliminals, and even the obvious things that they're talking about, it's incredible that this is the type of stuff that's on these networks. And this is the type of stuff that puts the seeds into your children's minds that later get germinated and warp their minds. You see, the way that the establishment hooks the youth is through planting little seeds in the consciousness, in the mind. And then those seeds, once they're in the mind firmly, folks, what ends up happening is that the child develops in a world where culture actually provides the water to help that seed, or seeds, plural. It helps the seeds germinate. So there's an injection period at a young age, and I don't mean that literally, although most of us do get multiple physical injections. But there's an injection period when you're young where your consciousness, which is very innocent, your mind, which is very empty when you're young, because it hasn't absorbed all the nonsense, these seeds start getting thrown into your mind. Through the television, through watching your peers, through observing reality, by listening to your teachers, but by just a handful of things, some various seeds get thrown into your mind. And then as you age, as your body grows, as you learn more here in this culture, folks, the culture and the way that the world is designed, it actually helps. It provides the necessary nutrients for those seeds to start to take root. And as they take root, there's a forfeiting of the innocence and a reformatting based on the mass weight of culture's conditioning effects on the mind. Your subconscious starts to take these seeds that are germinating, folks, and through the information being sent to your subconscious mind from these seeds, from all of just everything, your subconscious mind starts to reformat, if you will, and you become like everybody else. I hope that makes sense. It's a relatively difficult thing to explain, but simultaneously it's actually really basic. That's kind of the paradox of all of this, ladies and gentlemen. So, I mean, when you really start to look at things with your blinders off, you start to see that culture, ladies and gentlemen, breeds ignorance. It breeds stupidity. It morphs the youth into robots, into machines. It morphs the youth into machines. And what do machines do, ladies and gentlemen? Or essentially it morphs people into computers. And what do computers do? What is one fundamental thing that all computers do for the most part, folks? Well, computers execute commands. They execute the commands of the person using the computer. So if you go onto a computer and you open up a calculator and you start giving it commands and you hit the enter key, it produces the effect based on the data that you put into it. Human beings become like computers, ladies and gentlemen, because they lose their ability to harbor independent thinking. They lose their ability to harbor true independent thinking. And this is largely from the developmental period when you're really young. So one of the biggest keys to health, and I've been talking about this for years and I'm going to continue talking about it, folks. One of the biggest keys to health is to learn to go back in time mentally. and to unplug and to reformat all that stuff that went into your mind at a young age. Because it became you. It doesn't just become you, it became you. If you're watching or listening to this podcast right now, there are foreign installations in your own mind that you're unaware of that are affecting your reality in a negative way, whether you're aware of it or not. Just like I said earlier, the way things work in reality are far different than the way that you think they do. Jordan Maxwell had a lecture that I used to watch before I think it was taken off of YouTube, where one of the things that he really tried to drive home with the lecture was that the world as you know it does not work the way that you think it does. There are secrets and all sorts of stuff going on beneath the obvious parts of reality that you're not aware of. You're kept in the dark. And that's why I brought up the whole geoengineering thing, because there's massive amounts of people out there, ladies and gentlemen, who don't even look up at these aerosols being sprayed. They're not even aware of what's going on. Like, the people here in California actually believe that the drought here is just natural. We've had a water drought here in California for I don't even know how many years. It's been a long time. Now, I eventually moved out of California. I'm here now visiting family. I've been here for quite some time. But like the California that I'm in right now is not the California that I grew up in. It's been terraformed. Like, this drought is literally caused by geoengineering folks and a handful of other environmental manipulation techniques. Now, they want to blame it on global warming, but let's be honest. And these are just opinions. I have the right to share my opinions, ladies and gentlemen. This is just a free-thinking podcast, you know? Let's accept everybody for who they are and allow people to have opinions. I mean, it's ridiculous. Like, we should be able to talk about these things. We shouldn't have to worry about, you know, there's certain limits. You shouldn't just come out and publicly hate groups of people or this, that, and the other, but we should be able to talk about these types of things in an open forum, especially when all the patents are out, all of the proof is out about the reality of geoengineering, etc. being sprayed like bugs. But most people they're not even aware of it. So when you're unaware of certain things, ladies and gentlemen, you don't know that they're happening. Does that not make sense? And like, I can drive through a crowd of people on the side of the road while we're being sprayed heavily with aerosols, and the people won't even be looking up or noticing, or they'll think they're contrails. So the same type of thing translates over to our own mind, ladies and gentlemen. There's a vast terrain of your own mind that you're unaware of, because you were never taught to interact with those layers of your mind. Your subconscious mind, your unconscious mind. You see, you operate within something that I call the front of the mind. And behind the front of the mind, that's where all your power is. But that's also where all of your programming is, ladies and gentlemen. So, again, in the same way that the world that you know, or that you think you know, does not work the way that you believe it does, either does your body and your mind. There are vast, innumerable secrets of this body-mind complex. This is literally a God machine, folks. A Christ consciousness machine. Capable of enlightenment. Capable of being able to do things beyond your wildest dreams. But we're kept in the dark about it. And we're also physiologically enslaved through bad health from being able to access the mysterious occult properties of our body. The extreme longevity, folks. All of it. So, we are a demigod. We are a species that is part... certain things I'm not going to say, ladies and gentlemen, but I will say that we are part angel, but we've been enslaved. Our body has been turned off to a large extent through the activation of our DNA and our genetics. We're now exhibiting less than 1%, in my opinion, of our potential. So we have the potential to become gods, but we're not. See, that's the thing. A lot of people say, well, why do you say we're demigods, bro? We can barely get up in the morning to go to work. Well, yeah, that's because we've been conditioned. And on top of that, we only exhibit a small fraction of our genetic potential, our body and mind's potential. It's kind of like a computer that's filled full of viruses to the point where it works incredibly slow. It doesn't work properly. Everything's scrambled. You're scrambled right now. The human species is scrambled, and we've sided with evil. We are no longer what we could be. Does that not make sense? So again, in the same way that the world does not work the way that you think it does, there's all sorts of shit going on that people are kept in the dark about. Your body and your mind is the same thing, ladies and gentlemen. There's all sorts of stuff that you'll literally most people will go their entire life not knowing that they have this vast potential within them, waiting to be woken up or interacted with. You see, most people will be kept in the dark their whole life about how most of their thoughts are not even their own. We've talked about this extensively, you guys, on the Sacred Serpent YouTube channel. And in the future, we'll do literally just isolated episodes on the podcast about how our thoughts aren't even our own. Because they're not. Your thoughts, the majority of them that you think are your own thoughts, are not being produced by your own mind. They're outside sources or fragments of emotions that have become thoughts that repeat themselves on a loop of sorts, kind of like if you went into a vehicle and turned a radio on and listened to it. Now, what I mean by that is most of your guys' thoughts, it's like you went into a car and turned the radio on and learned to think that the radio station were your thoughts. No. You're listening to your thoughts. The very fact that you can observe your thoughts means that you're not generating them. And sure, you can technically you can listen to or observe a thought that you produce, but it's much different than like listening to the stream of thoughts constantly moving through your mind, constantly moving through your cortex. There's a huge difference. So I guess one of the messages that I want to drive home here with this particular podcast is that the world does not work the way that you think it does. And just because you think something works a specific way does not mean that it does. We've got to get out of these ignorant loops, these arrogant loops, these overly confident loops where we think we've got it all figured out. That's one of the biggest problems, you guys. Thinking that we've got it all figured out. Thinking that you've made it. Thinking that you've reached the pinnacle of who it is or your potential. No. There's always room for more. And you've really got to learn that subconsciously. You've got to turn that into a belief. Because, ladies and gentlemen, if you can actually reformat your subconscious mind to believe that there's always more growth, you will do a handful of beneficial things for yourself, including increase your lifespan. And maybe we'll explain that in a minute. If you can retrain your subconscious mind to actually believe that there's always more growth, there's always more learning, you will do yourself a huge service. Because most people think that life is like a curve, if you will, like on a chart, if you can imagine that. Like you're born, you have your youth, you reach adulthood, you have your prime, you reach a plateau, and then you start to age. Now, whether you're aware of it or not, this aging and your life and everything that happens in it is largely determined by your subconscious beliefs. Whether you're aware of it or not, the belief that you're aging rapidly accelerates the aging process. I don't know how many times I have to tell people this before they begin to experiment with their own minds to try to manipulate this incredibly baneful, belief about aging. So if you can actually reformat your subconscious mind to start believing that there's always more around every corner, I can constantly learn, then you can potentially increase your lifespan, because your subconscious mind, instead of becoming comfortable with this idea of life or birth, life and death, you can potentially increase your lifespan because you believe that there's more. I hope that makes sense. That's something that I could literally take fucking 3 hours and talk about. And unfortunately with this podcast, I'm unable to take that much time to explain every little detail. I really do truly hope that you guys can kind of read between the lines, and through your own effort, research, trial and error, your own magic, you name it, you can start to kind of put the pieces together and read between the lines and utilize this message and really understand and grasp what it is I'm talking about. So some of the subjects that I talk about could essentially be books unto themselves, and to try to just lightly dust you guys with these messages, yet make it make sense. As I mentioned, each of these isolated topics, it's deemed very challenging. So I apologize if some of you guys are having difficulty grasping some of the things that I'm talking about, but I do hope you'll stay with me and listen to this podcast, because there's a lot to talk about, ladies and gentlemen. There's always more to life, guys. Like, I firmly don't believe that, like, at age 40 or 50, we start aging in the wrong direction or towards death. I truly believe that I believe that the human mind and body is capable of anything. I don't believe that we have to die by 100, folks. I believe that we can stretch it to at least to 120 and beyond. And I've talked about in the past how I believe that this body is capable of physical immortality. I just do. I've talked heavily about this. So here's the thing. Human beings are warped by culture and given a one-sided story to base the rest of their life off of. They're told what to believe about aging. They're told what to think about politics. They're told what to think about just the general way in which the world works. They're told about, what they're told which religions to follow and just all this madness. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this podcast is unique because I myself have spent years grinding away all the nonsense that culture put into my mind, and I've created a very unique energetic configuration. I've rewired myself in ways that I don't think most people will ever be able to, and it's given me a very new and fresh perspective on life, on human consciousness, on everything pertaining to what's going on in this world, including within my mind, my body, you name it. So I've actively torn away the layers of conditioning within my mind, body, and soul, and rebelliously moved my energetic field into alien positions through the shifting of the assemblage point, which is something that we've talked about heavily on the YouTube channel, and we'll talk more about it in the future. But through all this, long story short, I've been able to not just create a new way of thinking and feeling about life and the body and aging, all these subjects. I don't just think that it's possible to achieve what's quote unquote impossible. I know it's possible because of what I've seen, because of what I've experienced. So I'm here to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that never give up and always push harder and push against the door of opposition, because eventually you'll break it down. Do not let the collective gaslighting and the nonsense of this matrix take you away from your potential to reach gnosis, ladies and gentlemen. I hope that makes sense. Never give up. I'm not going to say that. There's certain things I can and can't say, excuse me. But again, guys, there's a difference between thinking something's possible and knowing something is possible. And that's what I was trying to convey with my message there. Any idiot can think something is one way, But to know it is much different. And to know something, you have to change the emotions, ladies and gentlemen. You have to change the fundamental awareness that drives your thoughts. And for most people, the only way to do that with certain subjects is to experience. How would I explain this? It's very difficult, you guys, and I don't want to make too much of a word soup. So let me roll my window up. In order to break out of the perceptual prison that the Matrix has put you in and start to understand that you've been sold a bill of goods and that you've bought into it and that it's controlling your life, and that in order to believe that you have no limitations, you have to experience the states of consciousness that allow there to be no limitations. And ladies and gentlemen, that is gnosis, also known as kundalini. This is just a fancy term for enlightenment. If you guys can get yourself to a state where you can experience these states of consciousness, you will move radically the assemblage point into alien positions and interact with the electromagnetic spectrum on a much deeper level. It will cause your mind to open up 10,000-fold. It will allow you to break the perceptual and awareness prison that you're currently in that keeps you in bondage to the idea that you're aging or all this other nonsense bullshit. It is the perceptual prison that we've been put in, ladies and gentlemen, that keeps us enslaved to these outdated belief systems which create our reality. Does that not make sense? I certainly hope that it does. So the key to reformatting the mind is to learn to escape the consciousness that keeps you bound to certain mind control constructs. And this is where sorcery comes in. Entering into what Don Juan Matus, the Yaqui Indian sorcerer who taught Carlos Castaneda throughout Castaneda's books, Don Juan called these states of non-ordinary reality. Entering into altered states of consciousness can cause our mind to experience kind of a rebirth of sorts, because you're traveling into uncharted waters within the consciousness. And through that, you can learn to look at what you normally look at life through, the lens. You can look at life through a different lens, and that can open up innumerable possibilities for you. I hope that makes sense. I keep saying that because I do. I just hope it makes sense. Man, I'm trying to come up with a good metaphor on how to explain this. So you go through the same grind throughout your life, day in and day out, and you learn to look at, that's like the lens that you'd learn to look at life through. It creates your reality. And this lens was handed to you from culture. Everybody else is looking through the same lens. That's why everybody believes the same shit, this, that, and the other. When you enter into non-ordinary states of reality, if it's done properly, you start to scrub the dirt off that lens. You start to realize that the lens has a bunch of shit on it, and that shit was keeping you from being able to see the true picture behind the lens. Much like Plato's cave, ladies and gentlemen, and I think we talked about this in the last podcast. Episode 1, maybe it was 2, I don't remember. But yeah, I'm going to bring that up really quickly because I hope that you did something with that recommendation I told you guys to familiarize yourself with Plato's cave. Very important. Plato's cave, to a large extent, is like a foundation of what I teach. And that was never an intention of mine. But looking back now in hindsight, years later, you know, sometimes I'll think about what I teach and it's like, wait a minute, this is a lot like Plato's cave. So maybe we'll make an episode in the near future just on what Plato's cave is and how it relates to life here in this world. But, you know, in long story short, the foundation of what Plato's cave is trying to teach is that human beings can learn to interpret things incorrectly when they're only given a certain amount of data in which to create an interpretation of something. So again, if you grew up in a fucking cave and you never knew that the world existed outside of the cave, you never knew what trees looked like or any of this, would you ever expect any of that to exist? No. Now imagine if you grew up in a cave with a bunch of other people who knew it was how would I explain this? Imagine growing up in a cave where there was a bunch of people there who knew you were in a fucking cave, and that they knew that there was more to life than what's in the cave. Yet they told you that this is what life is, yada, yada, yada. They never, they kept it hidden from you and manipulated you. You would never know what's outside of the cave. You would never know what's outside of the fucking cave, would you? Because you'd have no reference point. The reference point is everything. You've got to have a methodology or a system to compare things. Otherwise, you don't really know what the opposite of something is, if you will. And it doesn't necessarily always have to be opposites, but that's always a good example. Kind of like if you didn't know what heat was. If you didn't know what heat was, you might end up putting your hand on a hot stove. Well, now you know what heat is. Now you have a reference point on how to behave around hot things. You have something that educated you or created a subconscious belief about what heat is. So this world that we're living in is like a three-dimensional rendition of Plato's cave, because there's so much going on around us at all times that we're not aware of, we don't see. And this is due to our lack of perceptual fluidity. The programming of the assemblage point, the fixation of the assemblage point in the wrong position. This locks the consciousness into a suboptimal bandwidth where we only interact with a very small fraction of the electromagnetic spectrum. And within the electromagnetic spectrum, there's all sorts of stuff and life forms like within that we just don't see anymore because our perceptual fluidity's gone. We don't have the antennas anymore, metaphorically speaking, to tune into those bandwidths of consciousness, or those realms, if you will. So yeah, you might, be 100 yards away from a tree, for instance, and look at the tree and see the tree. But in the range between you and that tree, there is a ton of information and stuff going on in that 100 yards or 100 feet. Ladies and gentlemen, there's literally a giant light grid of sacred geometry holding this matrix together. Very similar to some extent to the light grid in the end of the Tool song Parabola. After the Kundalini moves up the man's system, awakens his brain, and he's able to see the light grid. There's a light grid like that holding everything together here in the material realm. You just can't see it anymore. So I'm using that to paint a picture. There's stuff literally right in front of your fucking eyes that you can't see anymore. But you've got it all figured out, right? Like, you've got it all figured out. And this is why people who are egotistical and cocky and think that they've got it all figured out are so cringy to me. It's like you're stumbling around drunk. Like, how can you formulate a belief about your confidence or this, that, and the other when you're truly not aware of what's even going on in this world? And it's because you have a limited perspective. And in that limited perspective, you think that you've got it all figured out, and you actually believe it because you don't have a reference point. You've never been thrown into alien dimensional wavelengths. And I don't mean alien in the sense of extraterrestrials. I'm talking about alien as in foreign. You've never actually pierced the veil and moved your consciousness into the various realms that it has the potential to enter into. And so the wheel turns, folks. And so the wheel turns. So this is life as we know it now. A culture of overly satisfied egotistical, narcissistic morons who think that they've got it all figured out. This is a hell realm, folks, and the more you actually become conscious, the more lucid you become, the more you'll start putting the pieces together, and the more you'll be able to grasp onto the truth of the words that I say. Once you start engaging in the alchemy, once you start modulating your health program, once you start augmenting your health, once you start accessing more perceptual fluidity, folks, you'll actually begin to, like, my message will make much more sense. You'll be able to understand it with a much firmer grasp, if you will. And that's really where I want this channel to be. This is really where I want this podcast to be. That's how I've always wanted my message to operate. I want it to be a tool that you can use. But I want it so that as you use the tool, the messages that I talk about begin to make more sense. Because you've not just heard what I've said, you've listened to it, you've integrated it, and you've made changes to yourself. And those changes that you make to yourself can lead to great discoveries about yourself, your potential, your everything. And through those discoveries, the dots start to connect. So, again, I've experienced some really incredible things here, you guys. Some really incredible things that probably at the end of the day aren't even legal. I don't think Kundalini's legal. I don't think, shattering the veil of all this stuff is legal. And, I have some specific reasons to believe that's the case. One of those things is one of those pieces of information, or why I believe that, is how my life became a living hell once the Kundalini woke up in my system. All sorts of strange phenomenon began to happen when I woke Kundalini up. Gas lighting, gang stalking, strange technological interferences, ringing in the ears, being followed in vehicles. I've had some really bizarre shit happen. I remember one night, it was like probably 3 a.m. And this was after I'd experienced Kundalini. And I experienced all sorts of light phenomenon in my house after I experienced Kundalini. Like, lights would go on and off, stuff would turn on and off. There was a point where, like, I could literally control the light in my room at times with my mind. I could turn it on and off, and I could also turn the ceiling fan on and off with my mind. Shortly after I experienced Kundalini, and I could turn it not only on and off, but I could fluctuate between high, low, and medium, the speeds, at will. I couldn't do this consciously all the time, but there were certain times where I would enter into this mild state of euphoria where my beliefs became more fluid. They weren't rigid. I didn't harbor I can't do this, I can't do that belief. And because of that, I was able to do these things. But there was one night, you guys, I don't know how long it was after I experienced Kundalini, where it was like 3 a.m. It was super quiet. There was just a light breeze, and like I could still hear the wind chime that my grandmother got me for one of my birthdays years ago. Sadly, that wind chime finally broke. It was like an awesome relic of her. The sound always reminded me of her. It was like these thin pieces of like agate or some type of mineral that were sanded down and then strung together and then bound on this piece of like natural wood, and it would make this really interesting clanging noise. But I remember hearing that noise, and I remember all of a sudden, or the noise of the wind chime, I remember all of the sudden getting this dreadful feeling in my gut that I was being watched, that something was around the house. Like, you guys ever have an instinctual moment like that where, like, you just, all of a sudden, it's like these instincts go off within you, and you're just not necessarily saturated with fear, but it takes over your mind and puts you or shifts you into it's like a warning system of sorts. And it was kind of a fear for me. It was like a dread. And I remember it's like, I felt the presence of someone outside of the house. And I sat there for a minute. And I had all these nerves going off in my gut. And I remember grabbing the golf club next to the bed and kind of getting up out of my bed, because I had a window there's a window at the time when I was living in California, there was a window right in front of the walkway in the front yard. So my bedroom had a window that, like, if you opened the window, you could hear everything, and the window was open at the time because it was hot. And I had my fan running and this, that, and the other. And I remember when I got up and kind of leaned up against the wall where the window was to kind of like, I don't even know how to explain the way it looks, but I heard these shoes, and it sounded like, kind of like not tap dancing shoes, but like dress shoes, like something a fucking agent would wear. And there was two of them, and they walked right up to my window, or next to it, stood there for a second, and then left. These two figures. And I remember looking out my window and seeing two figures. So there was all sorts of strange phenomenon that's happened. And I'm not saying that that's necessarily related to my Kundalini experiences, ladies and gentlemen, but I do believe that you get put on a watch system if you experience these full-blown Kundalini awakenings. And I don't give two motherfucking rats ass if you have a problem with me saying this. Ladies and gentlemen, they have the ability to track a phone based on the energetic output that it puts out. When your body has Kundalini moving through it, you become a fucking divine wand of energy. And incredibly powerful energy at that. You see, the human energy system is the most divine, it's the most divine fuel in the cosmos, ladies and gentlemen, and that's why the Archons feed on this. It's kind of like in the Matrix film, the first one, where Morpheus tells Neo, or instructs him, or teaches him, what the machines use humans for. We put off a very powerful energy. You see, you're a god machine. You're a demigod. You just don't know it. Your perceptual fluidity's been hijacked and you've been manipulated. The energy that you put off is divine. It's holy energy. It's energy created by the true living God. You think that doesn't have a power to it? You just don't even, but the thing is you don't even have an aura anymore. You have like a fragmented energy field that just gets fed on constantly. But when an individual experiences Kundalini and that aura actually like recalibrates, and the Merkaba recalibrates, and you've got all that energy moving through you, you're telling me that there's the wireless systems and everything in the walls and all that aren't picking up on that? You really think that there's no way of monitoring that? You see, the government, ladies and gentlemen, and the military has been fascinated with Kundalini for fucking years and years and years. And I have government documents proving this. I've gone over it on my Patreon page. We've gone over those documents. Like, you really don't, like, you guys do understand that one of the things that like secret societies in the government and the military are most fascinated in is like understanding the secrets of the human body. You do realize that, right? You do realize that's one of the things that Hitler was fascinated in, and even our own government, and it still is to this day. You do realize that there's a race to try to figure out how to enlighten the human body, right? You do realize this, right? We've all been kept in the dark. But yeah, like, just aside from that, just strange phenomenon, like weird things would happen. Like, I felt like I was being spied on. I felt like people or around me that shouldn't have been. I had experiences with my ex-girlfriend where like we would go, I remember going to the emergency room with her once because she was having an issue. I'm not going to say what it was because some things are private, but these two guys ended up walking in, and they ended up sitting next to a booth, or in a booth somewhat close to us, or it wasn't a booth, it was a set of chairs, but it was kind of divided by a little wall, so it kind of seemed like a booth. And they were using both of our names. They were talking about what we were doing earlier that day. And the whole thing was just a gang stalking, gaslight. That's what it was. I mean, this happened on a handful of occasions. It's one thing to hear something yourself, like people talking about you or whatnot, because that can kind of make you question your sanity. Because it's like, okay, am I hearing things, or did that actually happen? But when you have another person with you and they hear the same thing and they can quote it word for word, that's something else. So, again, ladies and gentlemen, all sorts of crazy shit has happened after I experienced Kundalini, which makes me think that, there's people who know when you have these experiences. I remember one time I was at a field near my house in California when I was living in California, and this is a field I always take Luna to. I still do to this day when I'm in California. And I remember standing in the middle of this field, and all of a sudden I heard this whoo, 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 whoo noise. And all of a sudden, you guys, there's a twin blade military helicopter, a black one, which you never see in California, or you never see in Walnut. You never see these types of helicopters where I'm from. And not only did I see this helicopter, but it proceeded to fly right above Luna and I. And it stayed stationary for a period of time before it flew off. And the thing was low enough to be kicking up the dirt and everything around her and I. Just weird experiences, you guys. And I'm sure a lot of you have gone through similar things. Like, there's a certain resistance that you get from reality, if you will, when you start to meander or poke at what you're not supposed to be poking at. It's very interesting. It's a phenomenon, in my opinion, and I find the whole thing very fascinating. So I don't give two fucks if people hear this message and think that I sound loopy or crazy for saying what I just said. Like, just because you live in this weird world where you think your job and your bank and your phone bill is your life and your family, there's all sorts of shit going on outside of what you think is normal, motherfucker. Like, wake up. Become, more, just get more interesting. Why are you so boring? Like, would you really think that life works the way you think it does? You really think that what you think is impossible is impossible? That's just dumb thinking from the get-go, you guys, to just subscribe to that's not possible, or, oh, that person's crazy because of this, that, and the other. Like, you have no clue. You guys are like the cogs that the Matrix depends on. Like, just strict, rigid believing without even knowing why you believe the things that you do. Just, you were handed down a bunch of culturally accepted norms and beliefs, and now you are who you are. Pretty exciting, right? Not. It's incredible. One of the things that I've always tried to teach, and one of the things that I've always wanted people to take away from my messages, is to never give in to illegitimate thinking and believing processes. They're the most dangerous things in the world. They are the true cancers. When you subscribe to beliefs and ideas, ladies and gentlemen, with just for the hell of it. And most people's belief systems are full of these types of beliefs. Things that you don't even know why you believe them, other than the experts say it's true, therefore it is. You know, guys, Before we continue our message here on this podcast, I just want to say that there's been experts throughout history that said things that were more often than not false. In fact, a lot of the experts who said things at one point in time that were considered true, those things ended up being false. Most of the stuff that we're taught they're theories, you guys. Even the Big Bang, it's a theory. It's not actual fact. It's a culturally agreed upon consensus, if you will, or it's a culturally agreed upon set of opinions that's been established by scientists, bigwigs, etc. What we consider the greatest thinkers and smartest people of our times. They come up with what's accurate. They tell us what's right. And I'm not saying that all experts are incorrect, folks. That's not what I'm trying to say. There's plenty of brilliant people out there who have a firm grasp of what's going on. What I'm trying to instill in my viewers is that don't just believe people because they're experts or because, just because you're told to. That's dumb. And in fact, any expert or scientist who tells you to conform to that way of believing, just believe it because we say so, those are dangerous people. And that goes against what science is actually about, ladies and gentlemen. Science should inspire you to never stop questioning, because that's how we come to the greatest conclusions, or not necessarily conclusions, but that's how we open up the gateway that can leadeth to answers, which can lead to wisdom. We should just not stop questioning until we've discovered the truth. And the truth, ladies and gentlemen, is something that can be distinguished. The truth is not a theory. Does that make sense? The truth is not something that's just agreed upon by a bunch of people when it's just a bunch of opinions. Let me rephrase that. The truth is not a culturally accepted amalgam of opinions. The truth is objective. It exists outside of people's opinions. It always has been. It always will be. It's the truth. It's solid. It's a foundation, if you will. I hope that makes sense. We should not stop striving. We should not stop until we discover the truth. And then when we discover the truth, we should keep going. And the truth, ladies and gentlemen, is that you have been conditioned to live in a suboptimal bracket, which keeps you enslaved to a very limited, it keeps you limited. You're in a very limited state where you only use a very small percentage of your brain and body's power, your mind's power, you name it. That's the truth. That's a solid truth to create a foundation on, because it will humble you. It'll allow you to realize, ladies and gentlemen, we got a fire truck here. It'll allow you to realize that there's more, or it'll give you a foundation to go, okay, I have more potential. I can grow. That's incredible. That's amazing. Let's do it. The consensus that they want to push on people is that you get shat into this world. I don't mean to make a mockery of birth, but excuse me. The way that we're born, I'm not even going to get into that. We'll talk about proper births in upcoming podcasts. But you get brought into this world and you get put on what I've always called the conveyor belt of the Matrix, where you don't learn to walk for yourself. You don't learn to create independent thinking constructs. You learn to go down the conveyor belt and just absorb what's thrown onto the conveyor belt, or what you observe while you're on the conveyor belt, almost like you're on like a ride at Disneyland. You're going on a ride in this little boat, if you will, on the tracks of the ride, and you're basing your reality based on what you see on the ride. When in fact, you could get the fuck off the little boat, jump down, go out the exit door, and realize that there's an entire world of opportunities for you, and that you were imprisoned in a replica of Plato's cave, essentially, which is kind of like the foundation of what the movie The Matrix is about. It's all based on Plato's cave for the most part, not all of it, but so. Guys, let's just keep moving. Let's keep the wheels spinning. let's keep up the good work. Let's keep working on our health. Let's keep doing these things. Like today, what did I do? I woke up, had some caffeine, took my magnesium. I had 6 grams of ascorbic acid, vitamin C. I took it with a little MSM, also known as methyl sulfonyl methane. That's how I got my day going. What else did I take? I took 4 capsules of Solar Ray Mega Mineral Complex without iron. It's got the vanadium in it. It's got the magnesium, the potassium. It's a nice, decent blend of minerals. The mineral deficiencies are one of the leading causes of insanity, in my opinion, here in this matrix. So, keeping those minerals up can really jumpstart your system. Just little basic things that we talk about here on this channel. Somewhere in this vehicle, and I can't seem to find what I did with them. I've got a Superior Source sublingual bottle of B vitamins. That's a good one. So, if you want to start getting healthy, you guys, use my YouTube channel and keep tuning in to the podcast, because we're going to have entire episodes on how to get healthy and whatnot. We've already gone over this a million times, but repetition of a message does indeed constitute mental programming. And as I continue to make new discoveries, I'll continue to share them with you. But if you want to get healthy in a very cost-effective way, one thing that you can do without even changing your diet, and I know that sounds crazy. Well, how can you get healthy without changing your diet? Well, just hear me out. One thing that you guys can start doing is just get on clean water. Technically, that's changing your diet a little bit, but everybody can drink clean water. Just get clean water, distilled preferably, and start a legitimate vitamin regimen. Look into the research of Dr. Abram Hoffer and Linus Pauling. Get on a ascorbic acid protocol, also known as vitamin C. Get the magnesium into your system. These are all basic, very basic systems. And get on the minerals. You can get minerals from Shilajit. You can get minerals alternatively from a multi-mineral supplement, which is always a nice thing to add to your regimen as well. It's cheaper than Shilajit. Shilajit's incredibly expensive, good quality Shilajit, but it's a remarkable mineral supplement, you guys. It's got a lot of really exotic compounds in it that you don't regularly find in other things. So for a lot of people, especially clients that I work with, when they just get on the minerals and the magnesium, that really, really helps them take off. And sometimes with clients, I also suggest a nootropic formula. And oftentimes I'll also recommend people who are trying to get the ball rolling, I'll recommend a mushroom supplement as well. And oftentimes it's not just a mushroom supplement with just raw mushrooms. It's got extracts in it, and it also has other, sometimes amino acids. Sometimes it's got other supplemental synthetics in it. So we've gone over a lot of those in the past, and I don't want to make this some pick and choose style podcast where I just explain exactly what to take and what not to take. When I work with clients personally, I always help them, if they're interested in me helping them, I always help them formulate a unique program or protocol based on their unique experiences in life, because what works for me may or may not work for you, and oftentimes there's a trial and error period there. But I mean, man, for most Americans, especially because so many Americans are unhealthy, simply just putting the minerals into the system, the magnesium, and some specific herbs and mushrooms, that can really just get the ball rolling. I can't tell you how many times people have contacted me who have told me, I didn't change my diet at all, but I just started adding these specific things in. And wow, I can definitely tell a difference in my cognitive function. And that's a great thing. And oftentimes, the beautiful thing about that, you guys, is when you start to experience those cognitive upgrades, those cognitive gains, it more often than not motivates people to take the next step, because they go, okay, if I feel this good by just changing or adding these things, into my regimen, then how good am I going to feel when I really start changing like my diet and like what I'm putting into my system, let alone what I'm putting into my mind? So, I mean, this is all very basic, simple stuff, and like getting off the gluten, getting off the vegetable oils, all of this. The only time I suggest eating vegetable oils is if you bought a supplement, like a vitamin E supplement or a vitamin A supplement, and it's got some oil as a carrier in it. Just use that until you're out of the supplement, and then try to get on something that doesn't have it in it. And if it's soybean oil or canola oil as a carrier, don't use it, you guys. You only want to use supplements that have oil in them. If it's extra virgin olive oil, coconut oil, palm oil, or things along those lines. I don't know why more companies can't start using like animal fats as carriers for like their vitamin A or their vitamin E. I simply don't understand that. It's probably a financial thing, but it's pretty unfortunate that companies are selling themselves short like that. So it's a beautiful thing, guys, to get healthy, to start just really like doing something unique with your life. You know, like a lot of people, they don't know how to break free from the mass weight of everything and like live their own unique, like just their own life. It starts with health, you guys. I mean, that's really how you start breaking the chains. Health is really everything, because without health, you won't have a healthy mind. And without a healthy mind, you're not going to have a healthy body. And if you don't have a healthy mind, you're not going to have a healthy life. The mind is everything, folks. The mind is everything. But then the system knows that by polluting the body, they can pollute the mind. And that's what's really happened here in this matrix. A lot of people struggle to have proper mind power because they're enslaved to bad health. Their cells are starved of oxygen. They're mineral deficient. They just don't have the physical fortitude in regards to health to be able to really grasp something beyond what they're being advertised. Does that make sense? I really hope it does. So I'm going to pull into this gas station. We're going to get some gas, and then we're going to continue. I'll be right back. All right, guys, and I'm back. Why does it look like my camera is not recording properly? Let me pause one more time. All right, so we are back. I found the B vitamins I was telling you about, and we're cruising. So, you know, the way I look at things, guys, is that I look at the human body as a miracle machine, but I also look at this body as a miracle machine that has a gas tank, and that gas tank needs nutrients. And unfortunately, the way that the cards have fallen and the way things have been set up here in this world, the foods that you're eating on a regular basis just aren't going to have the nutrient density that you need. So you've got to really in my opinion, and these are just my opinions, one of the smartest things that you can do for your health is to start eating foods that are not only nutrient dense, but supplementing yourself with proper nutrients. And, you know, for the foundation is the minerals, the vitamins, the amino acids, proper proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. And regardless of what some people may want to say, the essential fatty acids, in my opinion, in today's world can be used for great benefit if used properly. For instance, I'll take fish oil, but more often than not, I'm only consuming the krill oil. And I don't consume it every day, but a little bit of krill oil here and there, in tandem with a decent diet, in tandem with proper nutrient supplementation, the minerals, excellent stuff. You know, I would suggest and I would recommend that you look into the longevity products by Dr. Joel Wallach if they weren't so goddamn expensive. I think that, you know, the Beyond Tangy Tangerine is a pretty good start for people who are just getting into this stuff. It's got a ton of minerals. It's got everything that you really need for the foundation to be laid, but it's like $60. And last time I checked, it tells you to use like 2 scoops, and there's like 30 servings that are 2 scoops in the tub of tangy tangerine powder. But I think that there's like some little print on their label that says that people who are over a certain weight should take like, I think 4 to 6 scoops. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's what it says. So again, that's incredibly expensive. I mean, if you've got the money, that would be a good place to start. I've put clients on tangy tangerine before, and they ended up loving it. I used to take it. It's gotten too expensive, in my opinion. And if you're smart, you can create your own multi-mineral and multivitamin, even in like the form of a shake, for much cheaper, you guys. So, like, one thing I used to do is I used to take a base of liquid, and I would put in the amino acid powders. I would crush up a multivitamin and a multi-mineral and put it in. I would mix some psyllium husk and some spirulina and some brewer's yeast. I used to follow something very similar to Dr. Noon Amun-Ra's amino elixir, but I changed it around and made some tweaks to it. And I don't follow his work anymore. I think he's an interesting man, but just whatever you guys can do to get the nutrients into your system. Stop being so concerned about, oh, is this the right way to do it? Is the wrong way to do it? I mean, you should harbor a little bit of that, but oftentimes people end up being they end up being so concerned about things that they end up like wasting time and not just putting the nutrients into their systems. So for those who watch my channel, you guys know that I'm not against synthetics. I'm a huge fan of things like ascorbic acid, also known as supplemental synthetic vitamin C. I am a huge fan of things like the B vitamins, magnesium. I'm a huge fan of things like alpha lipoic acid and NAC, N-acetylcysteine. I'm a huge fan of even aspirin, you guys, to reduce the inflammation in our systems. I'm a huge fan of things like resveratrol, terrasilbene, and quercetin, especially when quercetin's mixed with bromelain. I'm not some naturalist purist. I think that there's a huge flaw in that, and I've seen so many people who go 100% natural become nutrient deficient very rapidly. I've seen people who go on almost whole food diets get fibroids and all sorts of issues. So synthetics in today's world, ladies and gentlemen, in my opinion, they're one of my biggest allies. So I found those B vitamins I was telling you about. These are excellent B vitamins, you guys. This is from a brand called Superior Source Balanced B Complex. You get 60 of them, and they're microlingual. These taste horrible, but you put 1 to 2 of them under your tongue and you can really feel this one. The thing is, guys, is that the way that we've been living our lives here in this realm, there's so much stress involved that's unnecessary, that what ends up happening is that our bodies, which were designed to harbor these minerals and hold on to these micronutrients and these vitamins, what ends up happening is, because the true living God created us, ladies and gentlemen, to have these reserves full, these minerals, these micronutrients, these vitamins, etc. What ends up happening, and hear me out, is that when we're under stress, the living God created us in a way whereby we actually burn through things like magnesium and B vitamins, etc. when we're under stress. It's a buffer system, kind of like the oil in your vehicle. If you run your vehicle out of oil, there's a good chance that you're going to destroy your motor. There's got to be lubrication so that the pistons that are moving up and down inside the motor, there's got to be lubrication in there so that there's no grinding. Crankshaft, I don't know much about cars, but I believe is it a crankshaft or a control arm? Not a control arm. A connecting rod. No, I'm not even going to try to say it because I don't remember. But there's these rods that connect to the pistons in a motor, and through combustion, the pistons move up and down and create power. And sorry, that lady let her dog go. I didn't want to run it over. If the pistons aren't lubricated, you're gonna you're going to destroy your motor. To some extent, you guys, minerals, nutrients, vitamins, and all these things, to a large extent, actually, these are like motor oil. You cannot run the vehicle out of motor oil and expect it to be able to go 100,000 miles. You cannot run yourself out of motor oil and expect yourself to be able to function the way that you were designed to function. And even when you start getting these nutrients into your system, ladies and gentlemen, they're just not enough. And that's the crazy thing. Like there's even a conspiracy, in my opinion, behind the supplement industry where like they keep the RDAs, the recommended daily allotments, they keep them low intentionally. So you could be taking these supplements and whatnot, and although your body's getting something, it's not getting anywhere near enough of the raw materials. Does that not make sense? Like they'll put enough vitamin C in a multi-mineral or a multivitamin to keep you from getting scurvy, but they won't put like it's just a joke. That's what I'm trying to say. Like really, last time I checked, the RDA for iodine was like, what was it, like 200 to 300 micrograms? What the hell was it? I can't remember, but it was embarrassing. Like the amount of iodine that they recommend for a pregnant woman, that's embarrassing. That's criminal. That's why the fetus comes out, in my opinion, malnourished. And that's why so many kids are growing up so stupid nowadays. That's not intended to be taken as rude, folks, in any way, shape, or form. Like, we have mothers and fathers having children when they themselves are not even up to par nutritionally. Yet you expect to have a healthy child? And you may think your child's healthy because it comes out looking healthy, but no, folks. No. It's a really weird thing for me to sit back nowadays and observe reality from what I consider to be a more nutritionally stable perspective. Like, I've gone out of my way to flood my body with nutrients. On top of that, I'm doing the inner work. I've shifted my assemblage point. I've moved it. I've experienced Kundalini. I look at reality much different than most people. And to look back and to watch generation after generation of these mutant children being born, and I mean that in the most loving way possible. I'm not trying to be judgmental, but like, they're coming out looking damaged. And these kids are being raised with iPhones and like digital babysitters and all this shit in the video games. What the fuck? Pretty soon, I'm almost positive, you guys, in the next 100 years, probably before then, probably in the next 20, school is going to be done through a VR headset, and everybody's going to be hanging out in like a digital library. I shit you not. I shit you not. I mean, we already see the push towards that. The virtual reality, augmented reality, splicing of the natural world with the digital. And I'm not 100% against it, but the way that it's being done is completely irresponsible and insane. It's fucking insane. How do you not see this? It's fucking insane, ladies and gentlemen. It's fucking insane, and I'm tired of it. I'm fucking sick of this shit. And I don't have a good goddamn problem. If any of you have a problem with me saying that, there's a good chance, especially if you've made it this far in this fucking video, that you're fed up with it too. This is disgusting. This is some disgusting ass fucking bullshit. Excuse my language, but what the fuck? Excuse me. You can only take it so much, ladies and gentlemen, or so far. Like, I'm just blown away. I'm fucking blown away. Because, you know, as much as I cannot stand people, as much as I despise people, as much as some people may think I hate people, at the end of the day, I want what's best for them, even though I want nothing to do with them. But to some extent, you guys, we've just got to sit back and let it burn, because not a lot of no one seems to be getting past the hypnosis. Nobody seems to be able to like put their mind outside of the box to grasp that maybe there's more to all this. You see, you won't ever escape the hypnosis if you're comfortable within it. How can you help people if they don't want to help themselves? And I'm not saying that I'm some perfect person that doesn't need help. I'm not trying to sound like some egotistical prick here, folks. But I am saying that I've experienced enough and been thrown beyond the limits enough through my own efforts. I've done enough with my body and my mind to know that there's so much more, and there's so much more that life has to offer, and that we're being kept in the dark, a dirty fucking fishbowl. And that we don't have to stay in a dirty fucking fishbowl. We can just as easily realize that we're in a dirty fucking fishbowl and jump out of the fishbowl into the ocean, or into a beautiful pond, or a fucking lake or stream. Something with some interesting qualities to it, not this bullshit. You know? Like right now, humanity, this is what humanity's like. Humanity is like an aquarium that's suspended 1 foot above an infinite ocean by everlasting chains that go up into heaven. Again, humanity right now is like a giant aquarium, and we're the fucking fish in it, and it's suspended, this aquarium, 1 foot above a beautiful infinite ocean, and this aquarium is suspended 1 foot above the ocean by everlasting chains that go up into the clouds. And we're in this aquarium, we're all stuck next to one another, we're all miserable, and yet we all try to tolerate one another, and we want to act like everything's okay. And we're not even aware that we're in an artificial world that's upheld and withheld by evil sources that want to keep our perceptual fluidity imprisoned and keep us in the fucking fishbowl. When in fact, all we've got to do is gain a little bit of clarity, unplug a little bit to the point where we can reach outside of our own mind and realize that, holy shit, look, little fishies, look at what's outside. There's a look outside the glass. There's an entire ocean. We don't have to be imprisoned. And then through, ladies and gentlemen, getting the nutrients back into our system, doing the inner temple exercise, developing a relationship to our subconscious, through freezing the foreign installations of our mind through the thoughtlessness exercise and the motionlessness exercise and the full body relaxation exercise, all the things that we fucking talk about and teach on the Sacred Serpent YouTube channel, and we're going to talk about this on the podcast. But through all of these things, we eventually jump our little goldfish asses out of the fishbowl, and we land right in the ocean. And now we go from a goldfish to a shark, or whatever the fuck. I don't know. Goddamn. We're not supposed to be stuck in this way of living, folks. And it all comes down to perception and bodily health, and a lack of the two. If your perceptual fluidity is hindered, you don't see the truth. If your bodily health is hindered, you're just not going to experience the quality of life that you could if your bodily health was better. So these are the two great alchemical arts. These are the two twin lovers, folks, the body and the mind. Healing them. You see, there's got to be a desire to heal, kind of like that Tool song, The Patient. If there was no desire to heal, the damage has broken men alone. This tedious path I've chosen here, or however it goes. You see, healing is not just about putting vitamins in your mouth. Healing, ladies and gentlemen, is realizing and recognizing your broken parts and your damaged parts and fixing them. And we all have them. Healing is not just about nutrients. Healing is not just about grounding yourself and getting good sleep and putting magnesium into your body. Sure, it has an intimate play in all of that. But healing, folks, healing is about going in and finding what's out of alignment and fixing it. And to a large extent, again, that is about nutrients. Getting quality foods back into our system. And more importantly, almost, getting the wrong foods out of our systems. Oftentimes, what's holding people back is not what they're not consuming in the form of vitamins, minerals, etc. It's what they're consuming. Consume. That should give you a clue. Consume. What are you consuming? Are you eating things that are destroying your health? And if you're eating gluten, you are. Gluten destroys. We've gone over this a million times, and I'm not going to be repetitive. But gluten is a family of proteins contained in specific grains and starches that contain... it's a family of proteins of which there are two main proteins, gliadin and glutenin. These two proteins, your stomach acid has a very difficult time breaking apart the chemical bonds that hold the amino acids together on the protein structures. They end up going in past the stomach into the small intestine, partially digested, not fully digested, and they destroy your intestinal villi. These are your absorptive tissues, folks. This causes you to not be able to absorb nutrients. Most of you guys have eaten gluten your whole life, and you wonder why you're unhealthy. You wonder why you can't, you don't feel better when you eat the right foods. It's because you're consuming something that's destroying your ability to absorb nutrients. One of the most important things to do is to take a break from gluten, do a reset. And a reset, you guys, will allow you to repopulate your microvilli and your intestinal villi. Again, these are like finger-like spongy protrusions that line your small intestine. They absorb nutrients and funnel them and ferry them into the bloodstream. You guys have severely damaged digestive, absorptive tissues, So clownfish, I don't know how many of you, what are those things called that clownfish sit in? Are they anemones? I don't think they're anemones, but clownfish have this symbiotic relationship with this specific thing in the ocean where they can hide inside these finger-like protrusions that will electrocute other fish. That's what your intestinal villi look like. I wish I knew the name of those. I don't off the top of my head. But those finger-like protrusions, your villi, they absorb nutrients, and if they're damaged, you're not absorbing things. So gluten, it's a hard one to get off of, but once you do, your body's going to really thank you. So, this channel, this podcast, it's all about solutions to the problems in the world, at least trying to discover them. I'm just one person. I'm not saying that I have it all figured out, but there are certain things that I know can help you. That I wouldn't say I've discovered them, but I'm preaching about them. Read Dr. David Perlmutter's book, Grain Brain. That'll really help you out. All about gluten and how neuroinflammatory gluten is. It agitates the brain. Most of us are under massive amounts of inflammation. It's ridiculous, and that's why, anti-inflammatories can be really beneficial. Things like aspirin in the right dosages and the right type. Aspirin can be really beneficial during a recovery period. As crazy as that sounds, but salicylic acid has a handful of benefits. There's a huge smear campaign against aspirin, and I'm not recommending that you take it. And I'm not recommending that you take baby aspirin that's enteric coated or all the other nonsense. No, there's a right and wrong way to do everything, and I'm not talking about aspirin right now. But anti-inflammatories, you guys, even resveratrol has a very profound anti-inflammatory effect. Just like the foundation of health, you guys, is just cooling the fire while simultaneously re-nourishing the body while excluding the foods and the things that you're putting into your system that are causing you to not be able to absorb things. And that's largely gluten and vegetable oil. Those two things are like toxic wastes. Repopulate your villi, flood your body with the proper nutrients, do the inner work, block the blue light. It's all very simple. And then through the friction that's created from these applications or the application of these protocols, other avenues will begin to open for you. That's how life works. As you grow, things open up for you. Your path opens as you grow. The problem is that the New World Order and the disgusting, layout of the Matrix, the way that life has been set up, they put a stasis, ladies and gentlemen, on your development, on your growth. They stunted your growth. They've been feeding you the wrong foods. They've been feeding you the wrong thoughts, and you've bought into it. You've agreed to all these culturally accepted norms. There's a stasis in your development. And when there's a stasis in your development, it's like a dam. It's like a river being dammed up. When a river's dammed up, the toxic algae start to show up, folks. Things start to die because there's a lack of oxygen. Parasites come. So, again, health, to a large extent, healing is about getting the flow to come back. It's about locating the damaged parts of what's causing you to be ill and removing them or replacing them with things that will bring you benefit. It's getting the pieces to fit, rearranging things. And then once the rearranging is taking place and the fluidity starts to return, other avenues start to open up for you and you begin to flower, you begin to grow. The stasis is gone and you start to potentially, if you play your cards right, you start to grasp certain core beliefs that have been shut off from you because your intuition's gone. You see, as you truly get healthy, your intuition will return. And as your intuition will returns, you'll begin to see things more properly. It's not a overnight thing, ladies and gentlemen, because we've been fist fucked by the system extensively. Our senses are dulled, our minds are clouded. We are really fucking broken, and that's an understatement. But as you continue to do these things, if you stay true to your craft and your alchemy, the path will open up, your intuition will flower, and you'll start to, the dots will connect efficiently. It's kind of like we're compasses that are out of alignment. And as we get healthier, as we do the work, the compass comes back into alignment. I hope that makes sense. Once the compass is back into alignment, then the avenues of sorcery will open up for you. You'll be driven through your intuition to the proper path. If you play your cards right. This is the razor's edge out here, you guys. This is no joke. This is the underworld. I'm not saying that as you get healthy, God will just open up the path for you and everything will be easy. But no, you'll have a clearer mind. You'll be more in tune with your intuition to be able to make decisions more effectively based on higher reasoning and not just making decisions the way humans normally make decisions, which is more often than not based on whim and not like deep introspection. So we have two roads in life that we can go down, folks. We can attempt to become more and push the boundaries of evolution ourselves through our actions and our desires and our intentions. Or we can keep going down the path that we've been going down. And there's no judgment for those who want to go down the path they've been going down. Some people are happy living the life that they lead, and that's fine. But this channel is not about that. This channel is about people who want to poke into those areas that we're probably not supposed to poke at. This channel is for people who want to try to actually create evolution. Not just talk about it, etc. You see, a lot of people think evolution is just about slow aging, like we'll evolve over the next 100,000 years or this, that, and the other. Like, people think that slow movement through time causes evolution in a species. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to tell you that through experiencing enlightenment by trying to push the boundaries of our perception, that's evolution. Taking your mind that has been stuck in the same cognitive outlook or position its whole life and learning how to shift its awareness is evolution. Traveling into uncharted realms with your mind like a psychonaut is evolution, folks. That's fucking evolution. 110,000-fold. That's evolution. Pushing the boundaries of the mind and body past their imprisonment. And that's what this is, folks. This is fucking prison. I'm sorry to tell you, but being stuck in a state of mind and bodily power where you only use like 3% of your potential, that's not fucking living. That's not living, folks. That's prison. That's doing time, motherfucker. That's doing time. That is doing time. The problem is that we've learned to enjoy doing time. We learn to think that. We've learned to accept a way of living from within inside the prison walls. And sure, it can be fun. There's pleasures here. You can make money. You can create deep relationships with people. You can experience sexual union. You know, you can go explore things. You can travel. You can read books. You can buy cool toys and gadgets. There's things to keep you preoccupied while you're enslaved. Let me tell you, there just is. There are things to keep you preoccupied while you're doing your time. But most of the wealthiest people that I know, and I know quite a few of them, you can just sense that they're bored. As well as the poorest people that I know. You can just sense that they're bored. Because whether you have money and resources to do things or not, there's a monotony to life and a boredom to life when you're existing within the framework of mind that the prison guards put you in. Does that not make sense? Thoth, also known as Toth or Thoth, or Tahuti, from the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, talks about this beautifully. And I would suggest, if you've never read the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, or Toth as I like to call him, I would suggest reading the Doriel version first. Familiarize yourself with that. Familiarize yourself with the halls of Amenti, folks. Familiarize yourself with the keys of magic and the keys to wisdom that are found within that book. Read what Tahuti talks about the prison masters, so to speak. Now, he doesn't call them prison masters. He might call them guardians. It's been a long time since I've read that. I'm not 100% sure what he calls them, but familiarize yourself with this, folks. I mean, even the Tibetan Book of the Dead, the Egyptian Book of the Dead, Buddhist texts, pretty much every religious document of antiquity goes on to say that human beings are in a limited state, in a suboptimal realm, where their soul is not exhibiting, or their soul in their body and their mind is not exhibiting all of its power. We're in a disconnected state, and that there's these entities and blockages and setbacks that keep us from attaining godhood. The Gnostics, not agnostics, but Gnostics, GNS or GNOSTIC. Did I spell that right? Gnostic, GNOSTIC. The Gnostics were privy to this probably better, more lucidly than any of the other. I wouldn't say any of the others, because the Buddhists really are on point with understanding different dimensional wavelengths and the different layers of hell and all this, that, and the other. But the Gnostics really hit the nail on the head, folks. They know what's up. They know that we're existing in a that we're in a prison system. What do you think all these wireless systems are, folks, and all of the cell phone towers and those, like, all just the way that things have been set up here? It's a prison system where you're given a little bit of freedom, and that freedom can become, that little bit of freedom that you have can be really, really exciting for a while. But it eventually runs dull. For those who really have a mind to think outside the box, it becomes dull. Because no amount of temporary freedom or limited freedom is going to be able to really satiate the true Luciferian mindset. And I'm not talking about Lucifer, the devil, and oh my God, it's so scary, oh my goodness. Lucifer is the perfect archetype of a rebellious individual. The Luciferian flame. Lucifer and Christ are the same thing. It's the Kundalini. Those who are on the path will never be able to be fully satiated until they're in or achieving gnosis. No amount of money will be able to replace the deep burning desire to uncover the truth. No amount of fancy watches and bling will be able to replace the alchemical path. I hope that makes sense. No amount of anything other than that which what we seek will satisfy our thirst for wisdom. So, this message is not for everybody. And even those who listen to this message, this podcast, this channel, this message, I'm not going to say anything rude, but unfortunately, I think that only a small amount of people who listen to these messages will actually be able to do something monumental with them. And it's not that these messages are like some platform that's some great launch pad to do anything with, but I know that it can be. That didn't make much sense. I'm going to start wrapping this one up, you guys. We're pretty deep into this. We're about an hour and 40 minutes into this episode. So, just always remember, like we said at the beginning of this podcast, that the way things are presented to you in this world are often an illusion. It's a con. And there's a significant amount of peer pressure from culture that seeks to get you to believe the con. They want you to think that life is the way that it's being prescribed. They don't want you to look past that. And for those who do manage to look past it and actually experience gnosis, which takes us out of hell consciousness and puts us into heaven consciousness, trust me, experience those states and you'll see how the system has a dose of hell for you. They want to stop you from doing these things. They don't want us to create the rainbow road. They don't want us to create the necessary bridge for humanity to attain enlightenment on a mass level. There's a significant amount of resources that are spent and used every year to ensure that we stay the little slaves that we've become. This is why every gas station is filled full of alcohol and cigarettes and tobacco and garbage foods that have ingredients in them that are proven to dumb down the cognitive abilities of man and womankind. This is why on every fucking main road there's a fucking, not only one, but multiple, folks, fast food restaurants that have ingredients in them that are designed in a way that when you consume them, they're not compatible with the human digestive system. They're not compatible with you as a human being. You're eating foods that go against the laws of nature. It destroys your health. There's a reason why the fast food joints all use very similar ingredients. It's basically like edible cigarettes. There's a reason why, literally, there's like, I can go right up the road here, you guys. Where I am in California right now, I can drive pretty much any direction. And within 10 minutes or less, I'll find at least one fast food joint, more often than not, multiple. California has become infamous for having these shopping centers now that all look like one another, where there's like a Panda Express and a McDonald's and a Burger King or this, that, and the other, all within close proximity. So there's a taste of every little addiction on every corner. And people think this is food. Food is designed to do more than just keep you alive, folks. You can live on pasta and jarred red sauce, bread, and soda. That doesn't mean you'll be living, though. It may keep you alive, but there's a difference between being alive and living. No, there's a difference between living and being alive. Being alive is when you have the full expression of your senses. It's when your metaphysical antennas are actually are upright. It's when you can actually feel things, folks. You see, you have no clue what you were designed to experience. Your senses are supposed to be so alive that if you even for a fucking brief second experience what God, the true living God, intended for you to feel and experience, you'd probably be driven insane. You cannot handle the truth. Just like that Jack Nicholson quote. I'm pretty sure someone from the last podcast, episode 2, someone made a comment about how the episode made them think about that quote, the Jack Nicholson quote. You can't handle the truth. Well, most of you fucking, or I don't want to say you, because I don't want to point my finger at my subscribers, but it's like most people can't handle the fucking truth. Are you kidding me? Most people don't want the truth. If you wanted the truth, you'd be trying to reach beyond. Like I said earlier, a lot of people have become comfortable within the walls of the prison. A lot of people have become comfortable within the walls of the prison. And don't get me wrong, there's certain things that are nice about being inside the walls of the prison. You know, there's companies that import and export all the food for you and manage it. They set up all the stores and put the prices on it. And like the Matrix is a self-consuming machine. Most of you guys wouldn't last a day without it. Most of the people in the world wouldn't last a day, let alone a week, without the Matrix. Look at what happened with the toilet paper scare. Nobody was prepared. What the fuck do you need all that toilet paper for anyway? I'm still embarrassed for my fellow Americans for like do you even have food saved up? Do you? Do you plan on taking that many shits? You plan on taking that many shits? Really? Do you even have any water saved up? Like, I just wanted to ask all these idiots in line for the toilet paper. Like, do you even have any survival food? What are you going to eat? What are you going to drink? Do you have any medicine? Do you have any vitamins? Do you have anything saved up? Like, with the times right now, you guys, with the way things are, like, not only do I have a ton of storage food saved up and water, but I'm intentionally gaining weight. I'm putting fat on my body from healthy fat sources so that if anything were to happen, which now is the time that it would happen, but if anything does happen, I'll have a significant amount of weight on my body that my body can eat as a fuel source. That's what our ancestors did. They intentionally gained weight before winter so that they had not only something to consume when food was scarce, but so that their body could stay warmer. So I don't care if people have a problem with me saying that I'm gaining weight. I don't care if you have a problem with if you think that that's unhealthy. Putting on weight, ladies and gentlemen, is not the healthiest thing in the world. But the problem is that most people, the weight that they're gaining is from excessive blood sugar spiking, having chronically elevated blood sugar, and on top of that, eating the wrong fats with bad carbohydrate sources. Your fat is unhealthy fat. My fat that I'm putting on my body is the type of fat that's going to burn slowly. And it's also acts like, if you look into the research of autogenous wanderplanets, fat from the right sources, folks, acts as a very potent layer of protection between you and environmental toxins. So you might think that it's healthy to have your six-pack abs showing at all times, this, that, and the other. You might think it's healthy that when the grid goes down or something happens, your body has no fuel sources on it to burn through. But I don't agree with you. I've changed the way that I've thought so much in the past 5 years, it's not even funny. Like, a lot of the stuff we're being told, you guys, about health and what's right and what's wrong, it's bullshit. It's bullshit. So don't take my word for it. Experiment, test the protocols, research, and then through your trial and error, validate what works for you and what doesn't work for you. So, the whole healthy, thin is healthy thing is, like most people who are really thin, their stress levels are through the roof. They have chronic elevated stress hormone. And it's more like a lot of it's about vanity and wanting to appear a certain way. It's about like a lot of the really thin females and men that I know, they're like these gym rats, and a lot of them take like these crazy drugs and like pre-workouts. They just want to, and in Adderall and like Concerta and all this crazy stuff just to like be thin. Now, I'm not saying that everyone's like that, but I know a lot of people like that. Like, I actually know more people in the fitness community that are like that than are natural. As crazy as that sounds. Now, I'll take some nootropics. Like, I'll take some huperzine. I'll take some phenylparacetam, some coliracetam, aniracetam, oxyracetam from time to time. But, I don't take Concerta and Adderall and all these crazy stimulants that people are taking. It's like I just like the more I look into it, the more I realize that and I've known this for a long time, but it's like the general consensus on health is wrong, guys. The general approach to health is even wrong. Like working it out indoors on treadmills with a bunch of people under fluorescent lighting, ungrounded, out of the sunlight. No one, like these doctors and whatnot, aren't talking about the detrimental effects of blue light on melatonin production. Like what's actually going on here, folks? Do these doctors actually give two flying fucks? Do these people actually give a shit? Or are they just towing the line for their masters? Now, I'm not saying that all doctors are bad, but come on, do you literally are forced legally to enforce the rules that you were taught in medical school. You are. Like if in order for you to be a doctor or even a teacher nowadays, you've got to do what you're told. There's always someone above you monitoring you. Does that not make sense? So, I've said it once and I'll say it again. I've seen miraculous things happen with people that I've worked with directly when they just started. I'm not recommending that anybody does this, but I've seen people when they finally get away from the doctor. I've seen people who were treated by their doctor for over 15 years fix problems that they had treated for over 15 years in as little as a month. Usually it's between the 3 and the 6 month range though. But I've seen miraculous turnarounds in people's health with very, very life-threatening things in as little as a month. Just from getting away from the doctor. Because the doctor had them on a slew of drugs. The doctor also had them very lacking hope, lacking faith. It's amazing what proper nourishment does, guys. Now, once you mix that with the inner work, the cooling of the mind, the cooling of the body's systems, once you start doing the sound therapy, once you start bathing in clean water, once you start doing all these things, guys, I'm not saying that it's some miraculous cure, but I am going to tell you that some crazy stuff can happen. I've seen it so many times, more often than not. Unfortunately, that's such a hard one to break for most people. Because again, like we talked about earlier, there's so much faith that you're taught to have in the experts. Like you're taught to think that there's an entire hierarchy of individuals who know what's best for you, and that basically you're just like this broken machine that just needs all these checkups, and you got to do this and you got to do that, and it's ridiculous. It's a really stupid and unevolved system. It's a very, very stupid and unevolved system. So, I'm not here to convince anybody to go one direction or, this, that, and the other. I'm just here to share with you my thoughts and my opinions, and that's all they are. They're opinions. They happen to, however, be opinions that I've come across. I don't necessarily believe a lot of what I teach are opinions. I believe, at least from my perspective, they're facts, because I've seen what they do time and time again. I just have. And, excuse me. The only way for you to understand that, though, is to trial and error, trying these things out, doing the inner work, doing the physical work. There's a lot of maintenance that comes from trotting the proper path. So, anyways, you guys, I love you all. This is the conclusion of episode 3 of the Serpent's Tongue. If there was one thing I could wrap this message up by saying, is that don't be afraid to start. Get on the right path now, regardless of whether or not you think you're overweight, or, oh, poor me, I'm 300 pounds, or I'm 400 pounds, I'm 500 pounds, or poor me, I can't do this, I can't do that. Like, there's always a way, you guys. There's always a way. I promise. In any situation where you think that there's no hope, that's when you've really, really, really got to question your mind. Because that's a really dangerous thing, you guys. What that will end up doing is it'll just continue to drive. It'll continue to drive error thinking, and it'll keep you enslaved. It'll surely keep you enslaved. This is why we have especially the thoughtlessness exercise and the full body relaxation exercise. These two exercises will teach you how to freeze your overactive mind. And your overactive mind is the mind that's generating thoughts of hopelessness and feelings of hopelessness. So what you're doing with these two particular exercises, especially the thoughtlessness exercise and the full body relaxation exercise, including the motionlessness exercise, is that you're creating a temporary jam in the normal pattern of your cognition. It's like a hack of sorts. It's like a computer splice. What you're essentially doing with these exercises is you're creating an interruption in the normal flow of your programmed mind. And over time, what will happen is the more you do this, the more you jam the system, the more you will create a gap in between the real you and the fake you. And what I mean by that is, that may sound bad, like, oh, you're creating a gap. Don't we want distance? No. We want to separate the programmed aspects of our consciousness and our body from the real you. We need to create a space in between both, so that we can see the differences between both. This is what I mentioned earlier about the reference point. We need to create a large space between the authentic you and the non-authentic you. And we can only do that through effort. We have to create the necessary bridge so that we can, and it's not necessarily a bridge, it's more of, we've got to separate these two aspects of ourselves, guys. We have an unconscious drive within us, an unconscious layer to our existence that drives our conscious physical movements. I hope that makes sense. It needs to be exercised. It needs to be programmed. These unconscious layers of ourself are the true origins of, like, the word demon and whatnot. These demons aren't waiting for you outside of yourself in the way that you think they do. There's evil spirits for sure. There's evil malicious entities, life forms, you name it. But you right now are your own worst enemy. We like to blame things, our own problems, on other things because it allows us to not take responsibility. But once you realize that your mind has been conditioned to actually bring you misfortune, all you've got to do is accept that it's a byproduct of culture and that you did not have the proper tools or know-how to grow properly because you weren't brought into a world to teach you that. Take ownership for your own mind and then just start to create a better version of yourself. And it's not like creating a better version of yourself it's on the tip of some mountaintop and that hopefully I'll get there. No. The first step that you take to creating a better you is the first and the last step. You achieve greathood the minute you do it. And I'm not saying that there's not more to achieve after you take your first step, but that first step is what makes or breaks people. The first step determines whether or not you will have the dexterity, the will, the desire, the patience, and the strength, and the endurance, and the stamina to get from point A to point B. I've told you guys for years, primarily on my sobriety videos on the Sacred Serpent YouTube channel, that the first step to any great path is half the journey. If you can make the first step, it means you can make the second step. Until next time, peace be with you all.